7 p.m. It's Topical. Let's get to it. The first hour of It's Topical starts right now. Very good evening to you, South Africa, those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical, our digital audience joining us tonight from the University of Pretoria and Nelson Mandela University. They will weigh in terms of some of the burning questions they have for our guests in a short while. The economic freedom fighters have wrapped up their third National People's Assembly. Party delegates elected their top six leadership. EFF leader Julius Malema and the party's frontrunners were elected unopposed. The party's top six saw the election of Godrich Gadi as Deputy President, while Marshall Dlamini returns to serve the EFF as its Secretary General. Now, question, is this the top six that will effectively rebuild and regain lost ground? We will discuss. It brings us to the umbrella question of the week, and we're asking you, would you say that the new EFF leadership marks a new dawn for the party? Let us know at SABC News_TV. Come, magic all time. Couple of questions to ask, right? What does this new chapter look like for the EFF? Also, this shake-up in the EFF, what sort of implications is it likely to have for the country's broader political landscape? Let us know your thoughts at SABC News_TV. Also view our interviews on X using the hashtag It's Topical. Perspective coming up. All right, let's tee up the discussion for you. What we know and why it matters. SABC News politics researcher Maswili Ralebona joins me now. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you.
Let's talk. Any surprises? New EFF top six?
The surprise for me, Blaine, and many others would be the national chairperson, Nontando Noluchungu from the Eastern Cape.
Right. Why?
She's not known for as much as some of the EFF leaders that we have known since 2013, since 2014, and throughout when others were joining. But when you look at her history, she's been in politics, including in the ANC and student movements.
Right.
And now she joined the EFF at its inception, and she became the member of parliament. And when you ask around, they tell you that in the Eastern Cape, especially in the EFF, they know her very well. But when you look at the rest of the faces, we know Leanne is going back to she was the Treasurer General at some point, and then Godrich Gadi, who was the Secretary General from 2014 to 2019.
Well, let's talk about him. What sort of difference do you think he's going to make? What pundits are saying in terms of the impact Mr. Gadi is likely to have?
So when you look at Gadi, he was key in the EFF at its inception. Remember, the EFF grew when he was in charge there. Between 2016 elections and 2019 elections, when the EFF was growing, Gadi was the Secretary General. So we just don't know whether he will be effective at this position, since we know that the likes of Floyd Shivambu, when he was the Secretary General, he was serving under the shadow of the CIC, Julius Malema.
All right. Speaking about Julius Malema, I want to play a clip for you, just with regards to, okay, it's not yet ready, but in terms of what he had to say about those who didn't attend the conference and those who were unelected, or who was not elected. Talk to us. We've got that clip. Let's play it for the viewer. You get a better context.
Our leaders will have to grow very fast, because factionalism is what destroyed the ANC, and it will destroy the EFF. So I hope we are going to learn from here and go and build a strong organization, not build out of factionalism. And then friends, favoritism, factionalism, all of those who are burying them here today, when we go back home, we are all one united EFF. And all leaders of the EFF are here in front. There is no leader of the EFF who's not here in front. There is no leader of the EFF who's not here in Nazareth. If they are not here, they are not leaders of the EFF. You must never regard them as the leaders of the EFF. You chose the leadership. You must defend your leadership. You must respect your leadership, both in private and in public.
All right, Maswili, this person, this name has been on the lips of many over the past couple of days. What do we know? Did he attend? If not, what is his future within the party?
Okay. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, EFF. You can't speak about Mbuyiseni Ndlozi and not talk about EFF. We got to know Mbuyiseni Ndlozi through EFF. He was in the SCO, SCO in the SRCs in the universities, right. But he was not known. It's the EFF that introduced us to Ndlozi. And it will be difficult for even many in the EFF, especially the students, those who came to the EFF through the student movement, to disassociate Ndlozi with EFF. He was not at the conference. From the moment Floyd Shivambu resigned from the EFF and joined MK, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi became a sensation. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi became a topic in South African politics, to say it looks like he becomes the victim of friendship between Julius Malema and Floyd Shivambu. Many questions were asked, even yesterday in the morning. Journalists were still asking about Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, and Julius Malema said he is addressing the issue of Mbuyiseni Ndlozi for the last time. If anyone didn't attend the conference or anyone was not at the front, like he said there, it means those people are not EFF leaders and they are not supposed to be at the conference. So it kind of, Julius Malema calls it a day for Ndlozi and the EFF.
What can we read into the makeup of the Central Command team going forward?
The fact that the Central Command team was elected unopposed, together with the top 6, it would appear as if these committees, all of them, were negotiated way before the conference. You will remember about a month ago, when we were still preparing for this conference, there was a newspaper report that gave us the same top 6 to say this is what Julius Malema wants. They didn't say this is what EFF wants. They said this is what Julius Malema wants. Yesterday, just before the elections, when we went into the plenary, we found grouping of people with some EFF leaders, especially provincially, addressing those groupings and giving them that whoever is going to be elected, the name that is going to be proposed, we all raising our hand and supporting and giving reasons why. And to others, many people who are watching from home, they see unity to say this people knows what they want. But we are used to an ANC style of doing things, and the EFF from the beginning, they had adopted that style of doing things, where there are contestations and at the end democracy wins. But this time around in the EFF, it looked like it was choreographed, if I may put it that way.
The lady that came to the front and nominated herself, what sort of reaction did that get on the floor?
It was a joke.
Oh, was it? Right.
It was a joke. For many, it was a joke. The likes of Julius Malema and everyone were laughing. And the fact that there was not even enough people to support her and nominating herself, it's kind of unheard of. She should have, if she really wanted it, she should have lobbied and go ahead and put her name forward in a more democratic way.
I'll speak to our analysts with regards to the contestation of not only leadership, but of ideas within the party. It's an important point. Also important, that political report, it took over 3 hours, over 90 pages. How do you, first of all, what was the reaction to the delivery, the substance?
Within the plenary, people looked tired, and there was no warning that the president of the EFF is going to speak for that long. Everybody kept asking, when is this guy? When is Julius Malema ending his speech? And of course, I spoke to people like Professor Defu, who said that it was a lesson on Marxism, Leninist, Fanonism, and he says he used to teach that at university, but today he got another class for about 45 minutes, all of us listening to Julius Malema going on about communism in all its aspects.
How did that land, though? The ideology, the explanation of the ideology among the delegates?
So within the EFF, you have those intellectuals. You have those who are following on whatever leadership, the direction the leadership takes. I got to speak to some of the delegates who told me that Julius Malema is their president through and through. It doesn't matter what he says. It doesn't matter what people say. They believe in the EFF and its policies, the 7 cardinal pillars, and whatever that Julius is going to say going forward, they will stand by him.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Better mind, as always. Context important and it's topical. We will discuss shortly. Many thanks to SABC News specialist researcher Maswili Ralabona there. All right, I want to get a sense of the word on the street, what you have had to say about this, seeking diverse insights, of course, and perspectives on the EFF's National People's Assembly and the newly elected top 6. Take a look.
The new leadership that has been elected, those top 6, I think now they're going to have the same views because now they're under one common cause. And in that sense, it means now basically EFF can focus on their goals without having any different point of views.
I think the EFF finds themselves in a very difficult position at the moment. The party is suffering many losses, and so I think it's a move by the commander-in-chief to reallocate power to those he finds most loyal to him.
The ones we have chosen, we know that they are standing for what we stand for as the party.
In the future, it's going to sink in and people are going to appreciate the leadership. And going forward, I see them becoming stronger and stronger.
That leadership was like handpicked by Malema. Yeah, I don't really feel that it was democratic.
I was anticipating that Josie would be the deputy. But we are still happy with Gadi as well. He's also a great cadre. What I can say is that I believe in the CIC. I think he knows what he's doing. All I can say is that they must stick to the roots and see what happens. What's the future for the EFF as well.
When you look at the structure and you look at the people that are inside, I think stability is good for the party. These are still young people. And when you look at the trajectory of African politics, or if you look at the history, we've always elected very old people. And one would hope that as they grow older with the party, they can also try to entrench or strengthen the younger blood so that they can also take the reins in the future.
All right, we appreciate your thoughts on this. Let's get cracking with regards to the discussion. The campaign starts now for 2026. You heard that from Julius Malema. So what does this mean in terms of how fast or the approach on the road to 2026? We will discuss shortly. The guest tonight, political analyst Asanda Ngoasheng joins us. We hope to have political analyst Professor Siphamandla Zondi as well. But Tshepo Matseba is also joining us. He's a brand reputation strategist, managing director at Reputation First Group. Good to have you guys on the program. Also our digital audience as well. Please, if you have any questions, raise your virtual hand. I'll do my very best to get you onto the program and into the discussion. Asanda, let me start with you with regards to the, I guess, existential questions that the EFF should have asked themselves going into this conference. What are they?
Well, I think, the first question that should have been asked and also addressed even in the speech by Julius Malema is how he can expect the political party to have a future wherein there is no democracy and he is almost guaranteed the seat of being the president. Because I see this as something that may have led to the people that have left the EFF leaving. It also is at the heart of the conflict between him and Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, which he has kind of put out in public for the first time in a wider sense than ever done before.
Right.
And then I think the second thing is really for them to talk to what is it really that they want to be known for as a political party, particularly because what we're seeing now is with the addition of the MK, for example, the MK is gunning for Black consciousness, is gunning for land back, is gunning for economic renewal or repatriation. And so they're going to have to figure out how are they going to differentiate themselves from the new entrants like the MK and the various other political parties that have been cropping up and speaking the language that they used to own. But I feel like, the speech by Julius Malema unfortunately missed these two main questions. And because of that, it's going to be difficult for the EFF in the upcoming years. And also because of the very autocratic manner in which this political party is run, they're really going to struggle to grow. Because if you look at, for instance, the fact that just before the delegates were supposed to vote, they were told that some of the delegates from the from the Western Cape, some of the delegates from KZN were not going to be allowed to vote because they had not met specific thresholds. Now, this is highly problematic because in a democracy, you cannot bring delegates all the way into the voting room only to tell them that they cannot vote, because essentially what you're saying is those people who sent them back home don't matter, and their votes and their kind of opinions don't matter. And it's dangerous to do that with KZN, which is the biggest, the biggest kind of voting fodder essentially in South Africa, followed by the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape, make up mainly the Xhosa population, which is again the second largest group of Black languages after Zulu. So they're playing a very dangerous game as far as I'm concerned in terms of future numbers.
We saw the scenes, Tshepo, in KwaZulu-Natal today with the MK party celebrating its first anniversary. Talk to us about how would you describe the EFF's identity in the context of these new strong competitions coming to the fore?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I think it's a difficult period for brand EFF and its reputation, and particularly because underlying all of this is that there are common messages between the economic freedom fighters and the Umkhonto Sizwe party. When you listen to the tone, when you listen to the direction, they are all pretty much saying really, really common things. And then it's the further fueled by complexities, fueled by similar faces that we've seen before within the EFF, and having the strong faces on the other side of the camp within the MK party. The colors and optics may be different, but at the core of what you may say are key values that drive an organization, that drive a brand, that drive a population. In terms of the promises that are made, we are dealing with something that looks very, very similar, and it's going to be very, very difficult, I think, a terrain for the EFF between now and the next local government elections to shift the dial and create a space, especially within the context of an MK party that is beginning to talk about unity and peace and consolidating support of the Black, predominantly African political organizations.
What about Brand Malema? Has his disposition changed since the elections or even before the elections?
I think he has faced many challenges as an individual brand because despite the what you may call authoritarian approach, firm take no nonsense, if you may want to put it that way. Despite that approach, he has had challenges because within the new dispensation of South African politics, one can no longer stand in parliament and embarrass a sitting president without being kicked out. And so the space to articulate ideas is there, but unless the ideas are articulated consistently, you begin to have problems. He's also having challenges, I think, individually, because he has to try and lead a team, lead a political formation. But in doing so, he comes across like he's taking one of his own, and that if you hold a different view from him, or you hold a particular stance that he's not necessarily agreeable with, it looks like you get kicked out or you get punished. And that's a scary proposition for a young political organization and a young leader who has so much potential.
I guess the big question, Asanda, is does brand EFF survive without brand Malema?
Well, I think this perhaps is part of why he keeps winning in some ways, but it's one of those situations where he is both their best asset and also their biggest weakness, because, you know, as a brand, he does attract a certain kind of person that has, or at least appreciates his boldness when it comes to conversations, particularly around race, particularly around issues of the ill treatment of labor in South Africa when it comes to Black people. But I think that he also is their weakest point because of the manner in which he leads and the manner in which he doesn't actually have time or interest, seemingly, in actually bringing people into his decisions and engaging people on how he makes his decisions and why. Because even though you know, as a leader, you may make decisions, but you still need to create some kind of sense that people can have your ear and they can be moved. You can be moved or shifted in one way or the other. And that hasn't been the case in the EFF. If you look at even in terms of the kind of bills they bring to Parliament and all of the other ways in which they lead and engage, it's always about whether Malema believes in this bill or not, whether Malema's interests are going to be served or not. And for me, what's very interesting, for instance, is always looking at, you know, their stance on immigration and how, despite South Africans telling them consistently that they don't agree with the stance, they continue with the stance. And I don't necessarily have a problem with the stance, but I have a problem with the lack of nuance in how they deliver the stance, because knowing, for an example, that we are now faced in a situation in South Africa where corporate companies in South Africa are trying to replicate and bring back the conditions of labor of apartheid by hiring illegal immigrants under those conditions, which they know they cannot hire South Africans under. He's not engaging with that. And that's very problematic for me, because as a Marxist, that is pure classic Marx, being able to engage with how the owners of capital use and abuse people. So he's not emphasizing and unpacking for people the fact that there is exploitation taking place with illegal immigrants, and there's a desire to go back to apartheid labor conditions. And that is why Black South Africans should be looking to engage labor rather than just attacking particularly Black immigrants who are coming from war zones and who are coming from areas wherein they don't have rights, never mind the kind of labor rights that we are privileged to have in South Africa. And so for me, it lacks nuance. And I think, you know, if Julius Malema wants to be a continental leader, he already has the following across the continent. He needs to figure out how to deliver the nuance on this very critical issue of illegal immigration, while also balancing it with the fact that as Africans and South Africans, we do want to be able to trade with the rest of the continent, and we do want free movement of people and goods, but there are concerns that South Africans have that need to be addressed, that need to be dealt with, and that need to be engaged with. And that 3-hour speech did not bring the nuance, did not bring people closer to understanding his stance and why he has to take the stance that he has to take if he wants to continue to be the kind of person that has an EFF in Namibia and EFF all over the continent.
Kustas, jump in, weigh in.
Hey, you know, Herman, thank you very much, and good evening to our colleagues here. You know, as I'm listening, Herman, you would think that we are talking about a party that is about to collapse. EFF held a successful conference this weekend, and everybody was wishing, oh, Hail Mary, that things are going to go wrong. We did not see factionalism in these elections over the weekend, over the entire conference. We have not seen ANC style of backstabbing that we normally see in the ANC conference. EFF, correct. I'm not a member. Yes, it is wounded. Yes, this is their first crisis. But we have to move on. EFF has to move on. And they survived from July until now. So now the new leadership and its mandate is to rebuild EFF in the eyes of the public, where in this case, very few people said EFF is going to, yes, if the exit of few people did not mean that the EFF is dead.
Right.
No, it is not dead. Now what they need to do is to take advantage of the cracks within the GNU.
Right. Because that's
talking about the Bella Bill. They need to attack where they should be, because their job, it is not to be nice to ANC and to the GNU.
Right.
First and foremost, they need to take the advantage of the fact that there are cracks in the Bella Bill. So this is not the end of the FF per se.
Well, the big test, there's a big test coming up in 2026. That's not too far away. Professor Siphamandla Zondi is joining us as well. Let me get his take with us, political analyst. Talk to us about this top six and whether they can regain ground in time ahead of the 2026 local government elections.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, and good evening to fellow panelists and to the viewers as well. And for me, there's a number of key successes that the EFF can claim. One is the excellent level of organization that they demonstrated. And optics and politics are very, very important. And EFF has always been very good in managing the optics, how everything looks and how everything is smooth, how registration ran, how the credentials were ran. It's a marvelous end for many political parties. And how the build-up also work. To look at the provincial assemblies and how they always smooth and how they work together very, very well. Definitely, EFF is excellent in logistical organization of staff. Second, several weeks ago, actually more than a month, they circulated the policy discussion documents. Many of the very written, I'm an academic, I've been over 20 years and I've been reading complex things. They have written very, very well, very, very clean, very thoughtful, very clear what they're trying to get the candidates to think about and consider. Suggestions in the area of money, suggestions in relation to how they should post out international relations, suggestions on how they should manage the reorganization of the EFF and the staff. And quite thoughtful also on the moment. What is the moment that they face right now? And all those documents, if they were well consumed by candidates, they would have helped, by all of that, that would have helped them a lot. For me, thirdly, is the fact that they held this NPA as an opportunity to discuss very critical things, and they took very specific decisions. The decision to undo the regions and rather have sub-regions is one specific one. The decision to create a youth formation and put the student command inside that, it's a quite clear decision that happened in there. Then they had a smooth and unbelievable election, whose weakness was that it was not contested. There was not much contestation of it. But contestation is not the only marker of excellence in choosing leadership and all of that. But there is one great weakness for me, is that they were distracted literally before NPA. And it is not that they were distracted, that is a problem, it's that they allowed themselves to be distracted. They got so consumed with this thing, fighting Zuma, fighting MP, that they forgot that as a revolutionary movement, that they say their biggest enemy is capital, their biggest enemy is imperialism, their biggest enemy is neocolonialism, their biggest enemy is that people remain poor, and they made Zuma more important. In a way, it gave him so much airtime in their own processes, and I think that might let them not fully realizing the benefit of an NPA, which was critical self-reflection about loss of elections, the decline in elections. It's 1%, it's small, but it's bad for a party that's been going upward, that needed to put up 3 or 4% up to lose 1%. But reflected on that clearly, and they should have really made that the biggest focus for this rebuilding process.
Right.
And I think lastly for me, Julius Malema is a huge benefit for the EFF. It's a critical figure, but it's also their biggest
point taken.
Asanda, ability to manage emotions around him. His effort assisting in creating this image that he's a bit of a dictator and stuff. He creates it himself, and he does it a lot. And I hope he had held back a little bit for the good of the party, because the party is much bigger than him too.
Right. Moletela, before we go to break, let me get your comment, and I'll get Tshepo as well as Asanda's take as well. Moletela?
Thanks, Blaine. Good evening to the panelists and good evening to everyone else. I think Prof. Zondi summed it up quite nicely, but I think it's quite sad as a young person to see the state in which the EFF finds itself at the moment. It's, a lot of young people saw the EFF as a beacon of hope, where they thought that, they can make it their home in terms of being represented, Yes, in as much as they had a successful NPA over the weekend. However, there are so many cracks that have been identified within the EFF, and it's normal to have those. However, the distractions that came on the way to this NPA has ultimately made the EFF look like they're neither here or there. And another thing that we need to also note is that Julius Malema feels that he was betrayed by Floyd by doing what happened, or by what happened with Floyd moving to the MK. And, during his delivery of his political report, he was even crying and talking about his grandmother, speaking about how he said he's not going to leave the party anytime soon. And, he had an opportunity to self-reflect. He still has an opportunity to self-reflect, to say that, yes, maybe we went wrong. I went wrong here and here and here. Yeah. And then try and rectify and renew the political party. However, I strongly believe that if he continues with this victim mentality, because what I've noticed is that there's a lot of people who come and go in the EFF, and they're always the wrong ones, Yeah. And if he doesn't self-reflect and self-correct first and say that, I am doing wrong here and I did wrong here and there. Yeah. The party is not going to move forward. It's not going to grow beyond the 9% that it's getting. Right. And a lot of young people see EFF as a beacon of hope. And if they do not see the EFF progressing as a progressive party, then where are the young people going to find themselves? Right. In? So, I think that is just my submission.
Right. And now, look, the pool in terms of competition is growing, and a lot of these parties are now focused or hyper-focused on getting the working class voters. How? What sort of strategy needs to be implemented now in order to take these various parties forward ahead of 2026? We're going to take a quick break, get my panel to unpack this further. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. We're focusing on the EFF. What does the future hold for the EFF now that they have their top 6? Let's put it to the panel. Asanda, just with regards to the approach for 2026, as you heard, Julius Malema said that the campaign starts now. They need to start working in earnest. But how do you think the EFF should approach coalition politics ahead of 2026?
Well, I think for me, the most important thing is I think Julius Malema needs to find a space to process his trauma, his pain, and his anger. Because if he does that, then the EFF has the possibility of having a leader with a clear head who isn't distracted. Because I think, you have a situation where black interests are being broken into 1,000 pieces and white interests are being consolidated. We have a GNU right now that has a Bella bill that is being engaged and discussed post the bill being signed into law, precisely because white interests are at the heart of the government. And this is the time when black interests should be consolidating, but we are seeing a breakaway instead of a consolidation. And so it's a very difficult time for EFF, for MK, for all political parties that represent or want to represent the interests of black people.
Right.
And a leader who is not reflective, as has been spoken about, who doesn't seem to know how to have a cool head, even when it's difficult, and who doesn't seem to know how to put aside his differences for the greater good, we are not going to get to where we need to and where we could get. And I fear that the MK is going to gain more ground in 2026 because they are sure of their strategies and they're not distracted.
Right.
They're not attacking everybody. They focused on themselves and they actually are becoming clearer and clearer in what it is that we'd want. Never mind, the fraud within some of their utterances, knowing who they are.
Yeah.
But I think that if Julius Malema could just ground himself, even attend a church group, something that will give him the healing he needs from the trauma and from the anger that he has, he really has the potential to lead, and he has the potential to provide a consolidated view of the future of South Africa that takes it into consideration the fact that we still need to deal with the legacy of apartheid. We still need to deal with the fact that black people in this country are still the poorest, are still the most unemployed, are still the ones suffering from hunger. And for as long as that is the case, people like Julius Malema and others who are interested in the Black Project are going to be relevant, but they are not going to be heard if they cannot put aside their own personal interests and focus on the national project, that is to ensure that there is economic emancipation and that we can speak coherently on economic policy. And that's why for me it disappoints me that he's unable to bring nuance and true conversation on the issue of immigration and why we need to have a different conversation about xenophobia and immigration, legal or illegal.
Right. Tshepo, I guess the big question is, how do you stand out given the current political state of play, given the current government arrangement? The difference between establishment and anti-establishment politics, right? It's seen as an attractive option. You see what's happening in the United States with the re-election of Donald Trump. Will the EFF now more than ever be looking to move more and set itself up more as anti-establishment?
I think anti-establishment might be a stronger word, but the EFF certainly needs to start participating or to strengthen at least its participation in resolving key societal challenges that are especially facing young people, because that, isn't it, was the emphasis of the foundation of the economic freedom fighters, that we will come across as an ecosystem that addresses key issues that are facing the youth, including access to higher education, dealing with unemployment, and addressing the pandemic called crime and violent crimes, which impacts young people every single day consistently. And importantly, this dialogue about how do we create a space for foreign companies and individuals to contribute in South Africa, but do so in a legal manner. So to lead the dialogue that creates space for more constructive engagement, meaningful engagement, as opposed to general rhetoric that seems to suggest that we are solving a problem when we're actually doing absolutely nothing about it.
Yeah.
And the last point perhaps is this, that the biggest missed opportunity is that the EFF has contributed to the building of a brand called Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. Whether we like him or not, whether he has a constituency or not, is a different story. But as a brand, he carries a certain degree of equity that could actually help the economic freedom fighters. And the fact that Malema and the team could not come to the table and say, let's have a dialogue, let's have a discussion. It doesn't have to go in this direction. That is a lost opportunity because it may entrench a view that he's a dictator. And it may entrench a view that if you are not on his side, actually you are going to be kicked out and left, as they say in the ANC, in the cold. And they say it's very, very cold outside of that organization.
Prof. Zondi, how do you think Julius Malema handled the, let's call it the Ndlozi matter?
Sorry, I missed that.
How do you think Julius Malema handled the Ndlozi issue?
Oh yes, he was not the first person to handle that. I had hoped he would ask the Secretary General of the party, given this is a membership issue, this is a issue related to attendance, issue related to participation in NPA. I think Dlamini has a temperament to be able to simplify this, and he did when he was given an opportunity to do so. I think Julius Malema came across as too hurt. What has happened, what he might be thinking is betrayal, or seeing coming betrayal and all of those kinds of things. I think in the process, he might have been responding to Ndlozi himself and all that, but in the process, he speaks to greater people than the one he thinks he's speaking to. He's heard of millions of people who are listening, and they take it personally what is being said. I think he needed to have realized that he needed to speak in relation to the purpose he wants to achieve. They have to work out, what do I want to achieve with this matter? There are two things we could do to achieve with this matter. One is right away, and then talk about it in kind of a positive form. That Ndlozi is there, but he's among many. There's a debate happening, there's contestation happening, and just write on it and create that energy that is positive. The second thing could be to diminish this by simply announcing very early that it's an open invitation, he would come or he would not come, and everybody, but we value his contribution and all of that, and sit and go. But he decides to send innuendos that explain what he means. Oh, no, he's related to an owner of this. That, you know, in politics, when you communicate, but you do not have the courage to communicate fully, you leave too many things for people to fill in, and the story gets out of your hand.
Right.
And you're not in control of a narrative, and you get straight that will do that. Because when then the media keeps coming and asking, where isn't those? Where isn't those? It is partly because you're fluent. You've communicated things that suggest that something that is hidden. So when they are asking where isn't those, they are not actually asking for an address, not asking for a person, asking to say a little bit more than you have said and all that. So that is the failure of strategy for me. Because in the end, I'm not quite sure what he aimed to do, what was the purpose. It seems to me, in the end, it became a classic Malema, which is he aimed to fight back.
Right.
But in fighting back, have limitations because there are something not safe, which then simply means that his strategy is failing from the beginning because it cannot be carried out in full.
Right.
We leave a lot of space for people to fill in the missing words. And that is not the best way to run a political strategy.
Right. Hosi, let's bring in Hosi. I think his hand was up earlier on. Is he still with us? No. Moletelo?
Hi, Blaine, once again. Blaine, I don't know what's the job of the spokesperson in the EFF, because I believe the spokesperson of the EFF was supposed to be the one who was dealing with this matter of Ndlozi. Leaving it to a president who's hurting, leaving it to a president who we know that is a very emotional person, was a wrong move. It was a blunder on their side. And, leaving him to address it further perpetuates the EFF leaning more to a one-man party show. Because now, if the spokesperson doesn't even have the prerogative or the powers to speak about a matter, whether it affects the president or not, then, it raises a few eyebrows. And leading up to the NPA, it was interesting. I think they interviewed one of the officials. I don't remember who. And they asked that official, will Dr. Ngoasheng Ndlozi be at the NPA? And this person said, yes, he's going to be there. And then the NPA arrives, and then there is no one. So that's why I'm saying, there's a lot of self-reflection that needs to happen in the EFF. Yes, it's the first very big crisis that they're facing, but there's a lot of self-reflection that needs to take place, and people need to take accountability. I for one, believe that Julius needs to put his hand up and say, guys, I messed up here and here, and how are we going to fix it? How are they going to fix it? Because honestly, the EFF is attached to Ndlozi and vice versa. You can't go anywhere without Ndlozi being there with the EFF. So I really believe that there is a lot of self-reflection that needs to take place in the EFF.
Costas?
Yeah, thank you, Blaine. My final parting shot to you is this. I like the question when you said, what's going to happen in the coalition? The issue of Ndlozi, we need to bury it. Ndlozi is just an individual. EFF is bigger than him. The issue of coalitions, I'm disappointed that the EFF hasn't taken leadership on this water issue in Joburg, even though they're governing there. They're doing well in Pretoria. What they were supposed to do, I think for me, their strategy need to look at where the gaps are within the GNU and focus on those things. Those things are more than enough to turn the tide around and actually make people to forget about Ndlozi, right? With the Joburg water, I don't see them taking leadership.
Yeah.
In Pretoria, they're doing well, they're supporting there. I don't see them, their leaders coming up to say, hey, we have done well with this. They need to use the media more. And also, not just because they're in government, they sit quiet and they just watch. The GNU is on its cracks. Why can't we just capitalize on the Bella Bill? Go and get a match. In Joburg water, organize a match. Though you're in government, that's what you do.
Right.
So they must move quickly away from Ndlozi. I think after this, Ndlozi is just an individual. Leave that. Conduct a march to the Bella Bill, conduct a march to Joburg Water, conduct a march in Pretoria in support of the mayor. That's what the EFF should do. And stop leaving Ndlozi aside. I just want to thank you for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Costas. Asanda, is it even possible for the EFF to enter the GNU terrain without alienating their base voters?
I think it's literally at the heart of what they have the potential to do, the ability to engage the GNU. And I think, they actually have a very unique situation where, because they are in Gauteng and part of the GNU, the provincial government there, they can speak to how, when they are aligned in terms of values and engagement, they can and will cooperate, but they're not at a national because they don't align with the values of the Democratic Alliance and some of the other partners that are in the GNU. In fact, this is a unique factor in their government that they are not taking advantage of. And with the absence of the DA in the position of opposition, which means less noise really coming from opposition, they have the potential, they have the platform, but they are misusing it to be slandering at their members, to be slandering and insulting anybody within a 10-kilometer radius who even so much as looks at Julius Malema wrong. And that really is concerning to me, because they have amazing programs like their labor desks, where people who are victims of racism are able to go and engage with them and their leadership. They are misusing the platform and the potential that they have. Also, when they start doing things like, you can't vote because you didn't get 10%, you can't come to whatever because you didn't raise X amount of money. Like, is this a franchise church? What kind of organization is being run? And at what point do people in the EFF can feel that they have transparency? Because some of these decisions need to be known long before people arrive. And I think, I've spoken to a lot of young people who were very much strong EFF voters when they were on campus. But the minute they have to live actual lives and have to actually have a workplace and a place to live, and children who need to go to school, etc., they move away from the EFF because it is unable to grow up. And its leader, unfortunately, is the first that needs to show maturity, that needs to show not just personal maturity, but political maturity, because that is what South Africa is crying for. When you have been a political party for longer than 10 years, the strategies that got you into politics, the strategies that got you into leadership are not going to be the same strategies that are going to keep you in leadership. Longevity requires maturity. It requires the ability to discern that time is a thing that can solve things, that you don't always have to jump into every fight that you are called into. And this is the kind of maturity that people are looking to see in Julius Malema. And this is where he is failing, despite the amazing brand he has built, despite the global and even continental appeal that he has. He is fumbling his bag at this point, and it's sad to observe.
Hosi is back with us. Hosi, let's hear from you.
I just want to make sure that I'm audible.
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Wonderful. So I think the very first thing that we need to take note of is that it is very incorrect to be sympathetic towards any political organization, as well as the political leaders that are leading that particular organization. And I say this because a lot of the discussion has been driven on the point of the mistakes that the current chief and commander of the EFF is making. And it goes back to a very important question in the sense that the EFF has played a particular role in the society of South Africa, and it is losing its relevance in playing that particular role, particularly with the rise of the MK party, right? And what the leader of the EFF has neglected to do is to understand the fact that he is not the only important person in the EFF. There are individual figures such as Tshepo, who has left the EFF. There's Ngoasheng, who has led the EFF, who have managed to galvanize support of South African people in the EFF outside of him. And what he is failing to do in that particular moment is to understand that the EFF is going to be built outside of himself. And when we look at what has happened with the conference that has taken place with the EFF, he has centered it around himself and what he wants within the EFF. And a question that we need to ask ourselves, and an observation that we need to make within ourselves is the EFF going to survive outside of Julius Malema? Because if the EFF has established itself and planted itself in society, what Julius Malema needs to understand is that the EFF is going to be an important organization, an important political party without him. And the more that he fails to neglect that fact, let's put it like that, is the more that the EFF is going to die. So the EFF will only manage to impact society and continue to play the role that it plays once the leader of the EFF understands that the EFF is not about him or what he wants within that organization, but based on how he is willing to accommodate those that may challenge his image within the EFF.
Unity would be key, I guess, in the build-up to 2026. Prof. Zondi, post this elective conference, what's your feeling? What's your assessment? Do you think that the EFF is more united, or is there a level of distrust that exists within the party?
I think the EFF has signaled that it is there, it is present. But I don't think it is signal that it is building and marching forward. But remember, to signal that it is there, it's also itself an achievement. It was a party that was sliding in terms of elections, signaling a slide. Malema himself said the party died during COVID. It is reviving. So it's positive. Now, I would echo what Asanda said earlier on. You know, the EFF grew, for me, on the basis of three factors. One, it's militancy, regalvanizing youth and giving it back to politics. Two, taking advantages of the ANC weaknesses under Zuma and riding on Zuma, anti-Zuma sentiment in a very effective way. Three was, for me, the community work they were able to do. They did that, and the personality of Malema was critical in that, alongside the posture of Floyd. The EFF could project two images at a time. Now, going forward, it has to think about what will be the basis for it to go forward, at least simply to arrest a decline. I don't think enough was done in this NPA for the EFF to discern exactly where did things fail. Is it objective factors or is it objective factors?
Right.
And then decide how it's going to grow going forward. But then it's also decided that it will bring back the leadership that helped grow in the early stages. There's Malema on one side, and in this particular case, Godric Gadi. So it decided to change. But it's hoping that these fortunes are going to change, it's going to grow. If you look at the by-elections, all the by-elections in 2021, the AFF has not done well, unfortunately. Losing seats, even lost the one, the most recently to the ANC. And it is losing ground, and it's time to grasp this and charge forward. I think it needed needs a lot more energy from its younger population, from the wiser, more polished, more diplomatic element to complement the more abrasive, bold element of Malema as they build at all levels and all of that. And then lastly, the decision to go back to the old strategy, pay back the money, Zuma you did, it's not going to help. Clearly, it's not going to help. It's not something that can sell anymore. So they need to remake themselves. So I worry that they will come to 2026 having not gotten ready to turn their fortunes around. But I like the fact that they decided that they would engage the communities a lot more, and that in the process they would make sure that they address the issues of civil society, service and all of that. But at the same time, signaled to the ANC that if the DA walks out, they are ready to walk into the GNU. So, EFF, what are you deciding? I'm sitting here thinking there's 20 possible strategies in every direction. And there's a danger of being misunderstood if you are not very clear about which direction you are taking going forward. Are you going into the opposition and stand alone because you have this irritation with the MK party and you will push and you get things done? Or are you staying in the progressive caucus and you're leading it? I'm not clear.
Communication would be clear, would be key in this next couple of months.
As the would come, as they begin to convey some form of communication to society.
Prof. Zondi, thank you so much. You'll have the last word. Thank you so much for your time. Asanda, Tshepo, digital audience as well. Appreciate it. Value added, no doubt. Appreciate your time tonight. All right, before we go, here's my take. A political party's elective conference always, I guess, gives us an opportunity as voters to think about what sort of leaders we want in this country and whether our politics in this country is a force for good or is it all about fringe fears and points of fixation. So it's not just about the EFF, but in the broader political context. In terms of a leader, do you buy off on the personality long before you buy off on the party's ideology? From a stylistic point of view, from a substance point of view. Often, it's consistency and accountability paired with humility that makes a great leader, right? And not only moral humility, but also political humility. You heard Asanda mention that. Welcoming different political perspectives. There are deep, deep fault lines in this country. Poverty, unemployment, inequality. So the mantra in all these conferences of the various political parties should be put the people first. If you are in a position of power, then you need to use your power to put people in pole position. Put the needs of the people first. And that's my take. Even if you missed anything on this program, be sure to watch this episode of Topical on YouTube. Until next week, my brothers and sisters, take care. Bye-bye.